something is happening inside Apple. Something that feels almost impossible, deeply uncharacteristic, and undeniably unsettling. For years, Apple has operated like a meticulously orchestrated machine, predictable not in a boring sense, but in a way that revealed a company fiercely committed to rhythm, routine, and reliability. Even when Apple was secretive, even when it hid projects behind layers of controlled leaks and carefully crafted PR silence, there was always an internal flow, a cadence that industry analysts, tech journalists, and longtime observers could sense. But for the first time in well over a decade, that internal rhythm feels disrupted. Something inside Apple is out of tune, and unlike past issues, this strange shift isn't buried in confidential supply chain notes or obscure manufacturing chatter. It sits boldly on the surface, visible to anyone paying even modest attention. November has historically been a surprisingly important month for Apple, not for big flagship reveals, but for smaller, ecosystem-anchoring hardware. This has always been the time when Apple quietly pushes out refreshed accessories, upgraded chips, and silent improvements that stabilize its product lineup heading into the holiday season. Over the past decade, November has delivered new Apple TV models, updated HomePod Minis, refreshed AirTags, minor Mac tweaks, and improvements to various accessories announced through simple press releases. These kinds of updates weren't guessed out of thin air. They were grounded in patterns Apple maintained for years, reinforced by consistent insider reporting and supported by global inventory movements. When retail stock begins to shrink, when Apple's internal product codes start shifting, when distributors whisper about incoming replacements, it typically means one thing: new hardware is imminent. This year was no different. One of the most consistently accurate reporters in the Apple ecosystem spent months indicating that November would be meaningful for Apple's smaller hardware. Inventory levels backed this up. Retail systems flagged low stock. Suppliers hinted at transitions. Industry trackers lined up with a clear message: Apple was preparing to release something. And then, extraordinarily, Apple released absolutely nothing. Not a press release, not a chip update, not even a quiet bump to a product page. Instead, Apple simply posted a holiday banner promoting deals, an oddly hollow gesture compared to the updates people had been expecting. This silence is not ordinary. Apple is famous for its ability to speak through action, and when back-end systems show that products are ready to refresh, Apple almost always follows the script. Yet this time, Apple chose stillness. And the stillness feels heavy, like an unspoken admission that something internally is shifting, perhaps even unraveling. A company as large, structured, and historically organized as Apple does not break long-standing behavior patterns for no reason. The void left in November doesn't feel like a scheduling quirk. It feels like a signal of internal change. Nowhere is this strange disruption clearer than in the Apple TV. The Apple TV has long been an oddity in Apple's lineup, a device meant to serve as the digital heart of the living room, yet treated with such inconsistency that it has become one of Apple's most neglected products. The current model still uses the A15 chip, a capable but aging processor that falls woefully short of powering Apple's new era of Apple Intelligence, the company's unified on-device AI system. Apple Intelligence requires at least an A18 class or S17 Pro class chipset, meaning the Apple TV doesn't just feel slightly behind. It is completely incompatible with the future Apple claims to be building. Meanwhile, Apple insists that Apple Intelligence will integrate the ecosystem: iPhone, iPad, Mac, everything. But what happens when one of the most common devices in people's homes, the Apple TV, is fundamentally incapable of participating? In theory, the Apple TV should be a prime candidate for hosting local intelligence. It's plugged in, always powered, centrally located, and often near other smart home hardware. It could analyze room conditions, enhance recommendations, provide contextual awareness, and serve as a true home intelligence engine. But none of this is possible with the outdated silicon currently inside it. Even more confusing is that all signs pointed toward a refreshed model arriving in late 2024. Internal codes surfaced. Retail inventory thinned dramatically. Distributors prepared for a replacement window. Yet Apple delivered nothing. If Apple fails to update the Apple TV before the year ends, which now seems inevitable, the next practical launch period becomes early 2026. And that is astonishing, considering that the current model is already significantly behind on chip architecture. AirTag is another example of Apple's strangely halted progress. First released in 2021, AirTag has not received a single meaningful hardware upgrade. It still relies on the U1 chip, while Apple's newer devices have moved to the far more advanced U2 ultra-wideband chip. The U2 enables greater precision, increased range, more consistent direction finding, and improved background performance. Yet Apple has allowed AirTag to stagnate for nearly half a decade. This would be odd even if AirTag had no public issues, but the opposite is true. AirTags have become the center of widespread controversy due to misuse, especially in stalking and unauthorized tracking cases. Reports of people finding modified AirTags stripped of speakers, hidden in cars, and slipped into personal belongings have made headlines for years. Law enforcement agencies have raised concerns. Security analysts have called for redesigns. And in response, Apple has implemented only software-based countermeasures, temporary solutions to what are fundamentally hardware shortcomings. One would expect Apple to redesign AirTag with tamper-resistant components, stronger alert systems, or enhanced anti-abuse protections. Instead, Apple has let the product sit unchanged for 4 long years. Considering the weight of the controversies surrounding it, this stagnation feels almost irresponsible. Yet again, supply chain activity suggested a refresh was prepared for late 2024. And yet again, Apple released nothing. The HomePod Mini presents another bizarre mystery. Introduced in 2020, the HomePod Mini shipped with the S5 chip, the same chip used in the Apple Watch Series 5. Even at the time, many noted that the chip was underpowered for a long-term smart speaker strategy. For years later, that chip is ancient. Meanwhile, Apple continues pushing into a world built around intelligent assistants powered by local processing. Siri is being re-engineered. Contextual awareness is becoming foundational. Apple Intelligence is rolling out. Yet the HomePod Mini still runs on a watch-class chip incapable of supporting this new vision. Apple did update the HomePod Mini once, but only to add color options. Not performance improvements, not new silicon, not enhanced audio processing. Meanwhile, supply chain trackers noted that HomePod Mini inventory was tightening in the same way Apple TV and AirTag inventory tightened. Once again, analysts connected the dots. Once again, everything pointed toward a November release. Once again, Apple went silent. To make matters even more perplexing, Apple has been in discussions with Google about integrating certain Gemini-powered tasks into Apple Intelligence. Apple does not partner with Google unless it believes the collaboration is both necessary and beneficial. And if Apple truly plans to support hybrid intelligence, local processing enhanced by cloud intelligence, then its smart speakers should be the first products upgraded to support this future. Instead, the HomePod Mini remains frozen in 2020 technology. Some analysts initially assumed pricing might be the culprit. But pricing expectations for these products have remained consistent year after year. A new HomePod Mini is expected to remain around $99. AirTag 2 is projected to be $29 to $39. The next Apple TV is believed to fall between $129 and $149. No unusual pricing challenges appear in the way, which leads to the only reasonable conclusion. Apple has internally deprioritized these small devices. And that shift has consequences. Apple has historically maintained even its smallest product categories with surprising care. Airport routers were updated consistently. The iPod lineup received annual refreshes for more than 10 years. Even seemingly mundane accessories like keyboards and mice were quietly improved over time. Apple used to treat its ecosystem as a carefully curated whole, where every device, large or small, played a meaningful role. But over the past 4 years, that philosophy seems to be fading. The Apple TV remains stuck on old silicon. The HomePod Mini runs outdated watch tier hardware. AirTag hasn't been touched in almost 5 years. Combined, these issues point to a company placing massive focus on AI at the expense of everything else. Apple Intelligence isn't just another feature. It is a massive reimagining of how Apple devices operate. Creating this system requires enormous engineering power, coordination across dozens of hardware teams, deep machine learning investment, operating system redesigns, and new silicon architectures. Apple is pouring resources into one giant pillar. And when a company allocates resources so heavily toward a single mission, other areas inevitably slow down. This slowdown is visible now more clearly than ever. But the irony, the almost comical contradiction, is that the small devices Apple is neglecting are precisely the devices that should play the largest role in Apple's future intelligence ecosystem. These products serve as environmental sensors, smart home anchors, location trackers, room-aware audio hubs, and personal assistants. Instead of leading Apple's intelligence rollout, they are becoming the weak links holding the system back. Zoom out, and a clearer pattern emerges. Apple has become intensely focused on hero products: iPhone, Mac, and Vision Pro, while the ecosystem devices that enrich people's daily experiences are left drifting with no clear direction. This fragmentation is something Apple has historically avoided. For decades, Apple was known for harmonious product planning, where every device received updates on a predictable rhythm. Now that harmony is fading. The most realistic window for updates to the Apple TV, AirTag 2, and HomePod Mini 2 has shifted to early 2026. That timeline is not just disappointing, it is alarming. It signals a company losing rhythm, losing momentum, and possibly even losing structural cohesion in its hardware roadmap. Something is changing inside Apple. Something feels off. Something is slowing down in places where Apple once excelled with confidence. Apple is entering a new era, one defined not by predictable product cycles, but by shifting priorities, uncertain timelines, and an intense focus on AI that is reshaping the company's internal dynamics. Whatever is happening behind Apple's glass walls in Cupertino, one thing is unmistakably clear. This is not the Apple the world has known for the past 15 years. This is something new, something uncertain, and something the company has never shown this openly before.